Scrutiny and criticism have plagued agrochemical input companies over the years, but that's mostly because of misinformation or lack of enough knowledge about them. So today we are at Bukola Chemical Industries, one of the greatest in the region, and we're going to give you a bit of insight on how these chemicals are actually very crucial for farming, as their slogan says, for a bountiful
harvest.
So we are going to teach you a thing or two about how you can get a bountiful harvest without poisoning thyself.
Many at times, farmers grow crops, and as soon as they sprout, they start to spray them. Pesticides have been manufactured to have different levels of toxicity. Some are very toxic, others are moderately toxic, others the toxicity is bearable, and toxicity in terms of human health.
So with me we have Mr. Solomon Seruwo, a renowned agronomist. It's nice to have you on the show, Solomon.
Thank you for having me.
So many people have a thing or two to say about chemicals, and that's why you hear so many farmers emphasizing it's entirely chemical-free. Question number one, is it possible for someone to have entirely chemical-free produce? Number two, what do you say about the criticism that comes with agrochemical inputs?
Everything around us is chemical. Life is chemical. So to say entirely chemical-free is to lie. But in the context of pesticides, we know now that it's quite hard to produce food without protecting it from many pests and diseases. And when we talk about pesticides, they are both organic and synthetic pesticides. So irrespective of whether they are organic or inorganic or synthetic for that matter, the use of pesticides is a necessary evil.
So now we are going to figure out what is too much and what is enough, what is too little, hence the display.
One of the first areas to look into when one wishes to use or must use or needs to use a pesticide responsibly is the issue of choice. Many at times, farmers grow crops, and as soon as they sprout, they start to spray them. One of the reasons, which is the most important reason we spray, is to make sure that pest populations do not exceed numbers that cause us economic loss. That said, it means one or two pests, depending on the type of pest we are looking at, may be allowed to be in our gardens, and its existence will not necessarily cause a farmer economic loss. But as the population of this pest continues to grow, it reaches a certain level which requires a farmer to step in and ensure that he keeps the pest population below a level that can cause that farmer a loss. That point is what we call the action threshold. For a farmer to determine how the population of the pests is growing, they need to scout their garden frequently, often, 1 or 2 days or every other 3 days, to just go through and check how healthy their crop is growing. Check if it's not growing abnormally, or whether there are no visible pests in the garden. So as they keep monitoring, they can now begin to tell that so much pests are in my garden, and now they have reached a level that I must control them. And these numbers exist. The agronomists know when to advise farmers to step in with action. For example, there are guidelines that say if you are monitoring your garden and after 3 crops you are seeing 2 crops with 1 or 2 of this type of insect pest, get in and apply something, a pesticide that will prevent the pest population from building up. So that is one of the critical steps, and the most important one. The first one is to scout. The second one, of course, is the selection. Pesticides have been manufactured to have different levels of toxicity. Some are very toxic, others are moderately toxic, others the toxicity is bearable, and toxicity in terms of human health. And so the choice of a pesticide that is less toxic is usually recommended first, especially if one has a number of options. There are indicators of these toxicities, and the most critical one is found on what we call the pesticide label. Yeah. There is a part of the pesticide label that has what we call a toxicological band. These toxicological bands come in different colors. There is the red one, which is class 1A, class 1B, which are known carcinogens, and according to our regulations, they are not registered, they are not allowed in our market. So farmers worry not, because these are not pesticides that they'll often come across. And then there is the yellow one, and then there is the blue one, and then there is the green one. The green one, of course, is less toxic than the blue one, and the blue one is less toxic than the yellow one, and then the yellow one is definitely less toxic than the red one. So it's like traffic lights. So choosing one with less toxicity is a second area to look into. The third very important aspect is also found on the pesticide label. In fact, the pesticide label is a guide for responsible use of any pesticide, because it tells a user how they need to use the product, how they need to mix it, how they need to dress up, how they need to treat the empty pesticide container, how to harvest after treatment, and so many other very important aspects, including first aid. When one has selected a pesticide, either through recommendation or through their own evaluation and analysis, they must refer to the pesticide label at all time. And looking at the pesticide label, it tells you which crop that pesticide is applicable to. It also tells you how to mix and apply that pesticide. It also tells you how to dress up, which personal protective equipment must you put on. Because the following elements are critical: the human health, the environmental health, and the health of those that are going to eat or consume whatever has been grown treated with pesticide. So the pesticide dosage determines how well this pesticide will deliver and the safety of the crop, because too much, like you earlier mentioned, of anything is always bad. When you mix too much, your crop could experience what we call phytotoxicity. The crop could be scorched, and that definitely works against the farmer's objective. Every pesticide comes with a guideline on how much of the pesticide to mix. This is Weedmaster, for example. Somewhere on the label, it is written for soft and annual grass weeds. We are talking about weeds like goatweed. We are talking about weeds like pigweed. We are talking about so many other weeds that are broad-leaved and are soft and annual. The label recommends using 100 to 120 mils per 20 liters of water. For perennial grass and brushes, the label recommends to mix Weed Master 150 to 200 mils of the product in 20 liters of water. This guideline is adjustable also depending on the size of the knapsack that one has. Bomba Magoba, for example, is a 16-liter sprayer. If one is recommended to use 200 mils in 20 liters, that translates to 160 mils in 16 liters. This sprayer and every farmer needs to have what they call a measuring cup. This is a tool that helps a farmer to measure accurate amounts of what is required, lest the farmer risks to use too much,
or too little,
which would be dangerous, or too little, which would not deliver results.
wouldn't be effective.
Which wouldn't be effective. The measuring cup has a gauge which helps a farmer determine how much of the pesticide they are measuring. This sprayer luckily comes with a measuring cup, which a farmer is supposed to use to measure the amount that is recommended into the knapsack sprayer. These pesticides have guidelines further that tell us how to behave after spraying. The concept is called re-entry interval, which means a field that has been sprayed is not supposed to be, one is not supposed to enter into that field without personal protective equipment until a certain amount of time has elapsed. The re-entry interval guides a farmer or anyone who wishes to get into that field to allow that time to pass before they can get into that field to maybe carry out other agronomic practices and so many other important elements that they may need to check up on in that garden. But if they must get back into that garden, then they have to put on personal protective equipment. Re-entry interval is usually in hours, so they'll tell you 12 hours or 24 hours, which means if I sprayed today, no one can get into that garden without PPE until the 24 hours have elapsed. If one gets into the garden, the residues on the leaves of the crop will get in contact with their body, and certainly they may be poisoned. The other very important aspect is what we call the pre-harvest interval, which means how much time, how many days must elapse before a crop that has been treated with pesticide can be safely harvested and consumed. If you spray today and harvest the next day, and the pre-harvest interval has not elapsed, whatever is being harvested contains residues beyond what we call maximum residue limits that then would have negative effects on human health, especially chronic effects, which effects that come after a long time. There are acute effects which are literally immediate after one is poisoned, and then there are the chronic ones which develop over time. So once a farmer follows the guidelines that have been prescribed on the pesticide label, they should be able to produce food that is safe for human consumption. Otherwise, it's hard to say we cannot or we can entirely produce food without the use of pesticides. It's a necessary evil. What is interesting is, given the hazardous nature of pesticides, and some of them have been classified by WHO under different categories depending on what threat they pose. One example I want to highlight is glyphosate, which I think there's been a lot of conversations around glyphosate. It's in the product, one of the famous products called Weed Master. Glyphosate has been classified as class 2A under the WHO classification of pesticides and their chances of, for example, causing cancer. And class 2A is a category of probable carcinogens. But in the same class, you will still find the following. You will find microorganisms like H. pylori, which is Helicobacter pylori. We know it for causing stomach ulcers. You will find Plasmodium. You find so many others. So the risk of you getting cancer, for example, from glyphosate is equivalent to the risk, not really the risk, the ability for you to get cancer from glyphosate is almost equivalent to those, or the chances that you have from getting cancer, for example, from suffering from malaria or having H. pylori. And also, surprisingly, in the same category, there are other elements like frying. For example, those of us that enjoy eating fried food on high heat, including occupations like hairdressing, they are as dangerous. Glyphosate is as dangerous as those other elements according to that category. Now, when you go back to the risk-based analysis, it recognizes the fact that the risk for you to suffer the danger from a substance depends on how close you are to it, the proximity. Lake Victoria is several kilometers away from where we are, about 40 kilometers. The risk of us drowning in Lake Victoria, right where we are, is less than the risk of someone in Entebbe drowning in Lake Victoria. And so, the same risk is higher for someone now even closer to Lake Victoria. That's the risk-based analysis. So that means the emphasis should be put on minimizing exposure. That is why we recommend a lot of farmers following guidelines on the labels to minimize exposure. Those elements include putting on the right personal protective equipment while mixing, one, while applying pesticides, two, adhering to guidelines such as the re-entry interval and pre-harvest interval to ensure that harvests are brought to the market or to the table with amounts of pesticides below maximum residue levels. So for each particular pesticide, there are levels or quantities of that pesticide that has been scientifically studied, below which any person or a human should not have any negative effects. And so those guidelines are as imperative, and once they are followed, we'll be able to produce adequate food for our population. We'll be able to keep our environment healthy, ourselves healthy, and take very good care of our crops.
Well, and then it's a win-win.
Certainly a win-win.
Well, you heard it. Follow the instructions. It's as simple as that. And because we are dealing with the creme de la creme of agro inputs, everything that they bring to the table is first class. And it's not just about their revenue growth. It's about protecting your crops, your animals, and you, the farmer. Because at the end of the day, when you buy this Bomba Magoba from Bukola Chemical Industries, they have taken time to give you items that you can use to keep you safe, including the measuring cap and then goggles. So while you're spraying, you're quite safe.
You could dig deep in and
I would love
and find out what exactly is in this sprayer. So this sprayer comes with this gadget. Many farmers, after buying the sprayer, they put this aside and quickly go for the sprayer so that they can already jump into their spray operation. The spray shield, this gadget is called a spray shield, and its importance is to ensure that we minimize what we call spray drift. Because as you spray, the wind could easily drift the spray droplets and put them off target. and that could endanger areas that are not targeted. So this spray shield ensures that whatever is being sprayed is kept within the field of target.
Yeah.
This sprayer comes with an assortment of other extremely important aspects that are going to help the farmer carry out the spray operation, minimizing any possible effects that may come from poisoning. These are goggles. They are used to protect eyes from contamination. The sprayer also comes with a mask. The sprayer comes with gloves. It also comes with a number of what we call spray nozzles. Okay, these spray nozzles are not spare parts that when you lose one, you replace it with another. Each of these nozzles plays a specific function and is used for spraying or for applying a particular category of pesticides. This one in particular is called a flat fan nozzle. It is used for applying herbicides. It breaks down the spray solution into droplets small enough to allow the active ingredient or the pesticide to be able to penetrate and get absorbed into leaf tissues. It also comes with a number of others, including this double head with the adjustable nozzle, and a number of others that are used for applying either insecticides, fungicides, and of course herbicides. So depending on which you are going to use, then you can choose the appropriate or the right nozzle. I know that farmers several times mix, they do what they call tank mixing. They will mix a fertilizer with an insecticide with a fungicide, and sometimes the question is, so which one do I use? So we have nozzles that can be used to apply either both both insecticides and fertilizers, or all three, insecticide, fertilizers, and fungicides. So an example of this is what we call a conical nozzle. So we have what we call a solid cone that can be used to apply all the three, and also a hollow cone nozzle which can also be used to apply the same. Adjustable nozzles are usually used to apply on crops where we must apply the spray solution high up in height, such that it adjusts the pressure and helps the solution reach our target.
And for those that haven't gotten that, at least it comes with a manual, so you can take your time. Again, we are emphasizing there are things meant to guide you on the bottles. There are manuals. Kindly consider them, dear farmers, because we are looking for a bountiful harvest, and Bukola Chemical Industries is making it very, very easy for you. So next week we will go further into one of the very key components, and that is the PPE, how you must dress up to spray so you keep yourself safe and everybody else around you. Thank you so much for watching. That was the show for today. Keep those comments coming in. #NTV Seeds of Gold. See you next week.